After their victory in World War II, the Allied forces met at the Yalta and Potsdam conferences to determine the fate of Germany and its territories, specifically that of Berlin. The conferences concluded with the splitting of Berlin into 4 occupational zones. The Soviets took the eastern half, and the United States, Great Britain, and France took the western half. On August 13, 1961, the communist regime of East Germany began construction on a makeshift block wall between East and West Berlin. The German Democratic Republic claimed the purpose of the wall was to keep Western civilians from entering East Germany and threatening the socialist state. In reality, the wall was built to inhibit the mass deflections from east to west. Today we have individuals whose lives were directly affected by the Berlin Wall. These are their stories. Dun, dun. Don't be nervous. Whenever you're ready.
After the Berlin Wall was constructed, I lost contact with my brother, my only sibling, for 4 decades. For 40 years, I didn't know if he was dead or alive. I had moved to the United States with my husband, who was an officer in the army. However, I never forgot about Lothar. I wrote letters to Germany for years, but never heard back in America. I believe my letters were never delivered.
How did you find him after 4 decades?
He was the one who found me. Our sons had seen each other on the Facebook and recognized each other's names. They began to message each other and found there to be a relation. Lothar's son, Michael, had received my home telephone number from my son and called me from his home in Germany. Hearing his voice after all these years, believing he was dead, was the happiest day of my life.
For the purposes of this interview, our subject has chosen to keep his face hidden and his voice doctored.
Yes, thank you.
What happened during your time as an armed officer in East Germany that made you find it necessary to conceal your identity?
Because what I did was unforgivable. I was 19 years old when it happened. I was stationed in a guarded settlement in Berlin called Sorgenfrei, which was located right at the border of the West Berlin district of Neukölln. The grounds had been heavily guarded ever since the inner city sector of the border was sealed off on August 13, 1961. To prevent escape attempts in the outer areas near the border, armed guards patrolled the pathways between the garden allotments 24 hours a day. The day was June 11, 1962, and his name was Wolfgang. It was a normal day for me, at least as normal as it could have been. Sometime late in the afternoon, I see a little way off a group of young boys playing soccer. Eventually, each of the boys leave one by one to head back home, with Wolfgang being the last one left.
Are you all right to continue?
Yes. I saw Wolfgang heading towards me with his soccer ball. It was against the rules to engage with the children, but I was curious of what he could possibly want. When he finally got to me, he asked and pointed to my machine pistol. I tried to ignore him, but I gave in and engaged in his conversation. He wanted to know how my machine pistol worked. I knew what I was doing was against the rules, but I gave in to his pleas. Doing so was the worst mistake of my life. I began showing him my pistol and how it worked. Without removing the magazine, I released the safety which caused the accident. I mistakenly set off my trigger and a shot was fired. It hit Wolfgang at close range, right into his lung, where he soon died right after. Afterwards, the East German authorities attempted to nip all hostility and criticism in the bud. Wolfgang was one of the numerous innocent victims of the effects of the Berlin Wall.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in Berlin the weekend the Berlin Wall was torn down.
You are correct. It was a spur of the moment decision. On Thursday, the 9th of November, 1989, and Friday the 10th, the TV and radio in Denmark was filled with news about the events in Berlin. The Berlin Wall was about to fall. I knew I had to be there. I debated a while about what one takes to a revolution, so I settled on a dozen boiled eggs, a thermos pot of coffee, extra warm clothes, sleeping bags, and a battery-powered radio. Once I packed everything in my car, I set out for Berlin. I finally made it to the wall around 5 a.m. and it was complete madness, but also magical. I could hear the drills and cheers and chants coming from both sides of the wall. I began talking to a German lady who told me the next break in the wall would be here. And then all of a sudden, a giant drill began punching holes in the wall. Each time a drill poked through, everyone cheered. People shot off fireworks and emergency flares and rescue rackets. Many were using hammers to chip away at the wall. There were countless holes. Someone lent me a hammer and I knocked chunks of rubble from the wall, dropping several handfuls into my pocket. The wall was made of cheap, brittle concrete. The Russians had used way too much sand and water.
On November 9th, 1989, the head of the East Germany Communist Party announced that citizens of the GDR could now cross the border freely. The Berlin Wall will forever remain a powerful and emotional symbol for the Cold War.
I'm just looking at you right now. Throw the ball and hit her.
Well, that's not what happens in the script.
Oh, what happens in the
Then I'm
script?
gonna read the script.